Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another pen for review. Now, this was a pen that was gifted to me by a friend, Dr. Joe, and if you don't know, he's on Instagram, Dr. Joe Vitolo. This is a Chinese pen, and it is a Majohn pen. Now, this was sent to me via Amazon. Um, Joe had purchased this pen and shipped it to me. So this just arrived in a Jiffy bag or Jiffy bubble wrapping. It didn't come in a box of any kind. But this is quite an interesting pen. So as I mentioned, this is the Majohn, and you'll see here that it actually says Moon Man. So Majohn is the new name, I believe, for Moon Man. But this is an interesting pen, and I really do like this metal finish. It is an interesting design, sort of a vintage design there, with the rivets there on the clip. The pattern is as well on this pen is actually quite deep, so it's not laser etched. But it is actually an interesting pen for me. Now, it is a piston filling pen. You have this cap finial here, which just really points in a compass direction, doesn't move or anything. And then if I show you here, it's a faceted pen. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides to this pen. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think actually I'm just going to count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you've got the 8th one here. So it is eight sides to this pen. You do have a little bit of a step down here from the cap, but the pen is pretty much the same diameter, either the clip or the body there. It doesn't taper down. And then you have some screw threads here, and this is a piston filling pen. So if I unscrew the cap, you'll see here, it comes with a steel nib, and that is a Moon Man or Majohn nib. But what you can also do, which I really do like, is there's threads on the back there. So you can actually screw that onto the back of the pen. And I have to say that I do like that as if I wanted to post a cap, I always have issues with having the cap, the clip here, line up with the nib. And that lines up pretty well. Now, you do have to crank it tight a little bit to get that to line up. And it is a little bit back weighted as well. Now, this is a pen that I can post that cap on if I want to. But also, I can actually write with it unposted. And I have been writing with it a little bit more posted versus unposted. And that is interesting for me because I don't normally do that. And I would normally write with it unposted. But this is a piston filling pen, so the section doesn't unscrew, and this is the piston knob here that I am turning here. So it's an interesting pen. I think these come in around about £50 or euros. It's quite a weighty pen for what it is. Now, there are two types of this. You can get this, if you see here, it is a metal overlay over resin on that cap there. You see the black inside the cap. But you can get it just with a resin cap if you wanted to, or but the metal body there, or overlay essentially. Now, a few people said to me, well, that cap doesn't, or the facets do not line up. So you do have to crank it a little bit just to actually get it to match up. But then it matches up all the way round. The clip is extremely tight. I'd almost say it's non-functional there. I can't lift that clip with my fingers. But I think it's an interesting design. And there's a lot more interesting designs coming out from China now. And this Majohn is definitely an interesting one. I have to say that I'm quite impressed with this. Now, when it turned up, I don't normally have that much luck with Chinese nibs. So, like with most of my Chinese nibs, the nib was a little bit scratchy and a little bit dry. I did have to smooth the nib out, and I did have to floss the tines a bit. But I have to say, this is now one of my best writing nibs. I only did a very small amount on Micromesh 12,000 grit and a brass shim inserted in between the tines, the slit of the tine, just to try and make that a little bit wetter. And it really is actually quite nice now. So I am writing with this pen a lot, and I'm actually tempted to buy one of these myself. I know, though, that my initial experience was that this pen didn't write well out of the box, and it was my own nib tuning that made it write better. But you can see there, those tines are quite tight, and I've flossed that a lot, but it is now writing better. But I do wonder, if I were to buy another one, what my luck would be. Would I get another one that is very scratchy, very dry, or would I get one that actually writes perfectly? I've had the same experience with Hongdians, with Asvines, with Jinhaos as well. Like, some of them can write really well out of the box, and others are, I want to say, atrocious. They are scratchy, very dry, just wouldn't write. So they do need tuning. But I know a lot of friends that do have Chinese nib pens, and they say that they've not had any issues with them. So it's an interesting sort of, do you get a good nib out of the box, or don't you? And I know we've always had that discussion with more expensive pens, with Viscontis, with Mont Blancs, with Pelicans. But ultimately, no matter what the price is, whether or not it's a low price or a high price, there's always going to be some improvement that can be done to that nib. And that's why I'd recommend learning how to tune a nib yourself, or taking pens to nibmeisters and allow them to tune them on your behalf. But for me, this is a really nice pen, and I'd like to thank Joe for sending me this pen and buying this for me. I do like it now that I've tuned the nib, and I am writing with it a lot. So I think with that, let's do a size check, we'll do a weight check, we'll do a pen comparison, and then we'll do a writing sample. So the length of the pen, we are looking about 140 millimeters in length. The length of the cap, we're looking about 60 millimeters in length. And if I unscrew the cap there, it's not actually going to roll away because the pen is faceted. We're looking at 120 millimeters. Now, 120 for me is normally fairly short. I remember a Edison Perlette, I think it was, I had, and I think that was 122 or 126, and I found that short. But maybe I'm getting used to short pens. So 120 millimeters, that is short. It's not an oversized pen, and you can definitely see that in my hand there. But it's comfortable. It's got some girth to it. The section is comfortable as well. So for me, that is actually quite a nice size pen. I typically would like them longer than that, but I'm happy with that. So I think we'll do a weight check. Now, this is inked up, so it's a piston. So I've not measured the capacity, but I'm assuming it's going to do about 100, about a 1.2 milliliter of ink there. So the weight of the pen, we're looking at 47, just under 47.5 grams in weight. The weight of the cap, we're looking at just over 23.5 grams in weight. And then the weight of the body, we're looking at, just under 24 grams in weight. So that is quite a weighty pen. And I think that's probably why I like it more. It is a little on the short side to what I would prefer, but it is actually a nice weight. And if you post that cap, it really feels nice, or at least to me. I know a lot of people don't like heavy weighted pens. I do, and I do find that's a nice weight. So I think with that, let's do a comparison with other pens. So from left to right, we have a Benu Euphoria Earl Grey tea. We have another Benu Euphoria Earl Grey tea. We have an Anoto Charles Dickens, and this is David Copperfield. We have a Conway Stewart Churchill in the Blue Stardust. We have a Majohn P138 Piston filler. We have a Hong Dian, and this is the Qinghai Tibet Plateau 8041. We have a Asvine V126. We have a Magna Carta, and this is the Mag 600 in the Azure. We have a Magna Carta M600 in the Obsidian, and then we have an Esterbrook SD Oversize in the Cosmic Wine. So I think let's now go and do a writing sample. So this is the Majohn, and it's the P138 piston filler. And the nib in here is a medium nib. I'm just double checking that. Yeah, it is a medium nib. And it's a steel nib as well. But as I said, this now writes really well. The ink in here is Diamine Earl Grey. And when I say it right now writes really well, how did it feel beforehand? The times were very tight, so it wrote very dry. The cross strokes left to right was quite scratchy. So the left time was slightly lower than the right time. So I had to realign the tines a little bit and then just smooth that nib out. But and now I've also flossed the tines with a brass shim. It really writes quite nice, and as you can see here, quite wet. Now, in terms of line variation, I'd definitely say it's around about a Western medium. I can push it a bit harder, and maybe I can get a little bit more towards a broad, but it's a steel nib, so it's going to be hard to push it much harder than that, because you are either not going to push it any further, or you're going to break the nib probably. But you can see there's no hard starts or skips now, so this nib really does write well. Maybe I should have shown it before the nib adjustments that I did. In terms of wetness now, I'm very happy with the wetness. You can see there. So that is quite a nice wet writing nib. Now, what do I like? What do I not like about the pen? Well, I guess that, well, first off, it was sent to me free from a friend, from Joe, so I'd like to thank him for that. If I hadn't tuned the nib, I probably wouldn't have liked the nib, and I probably wouldn't be writing with it now. So, unfortunately, obviously, the nib did come a little bit scratchy, and that is just my experience with Chinese pens. Now, Joe also bought this pen for a bunch of other people, and most of those were actually okay, or good, compared to my experience. What do I like? What do I like about the pen? Well, I like that it's got this metal overlay. I like the weight on it. I now like the nib, since I've actually tuned the nib and actually made the nib write better for me. What do I just like about the pen? Well, it's a Chinese pen, maybe. I do have Chinese pens. It's just a lot of the Chinese pens are more the lower end of the market. Do they write well? Yes, they can do. It is a bit of a lottery, though, at least from my experience, in whether a nib writes well or not. And I typically end up, I'd say, out of my more expensive Grail pens, I'd say out of 10 Grail pens, I might need to just slightly tune one. Out of 10 Chinese lower end pens, I probably have to tune about 7 or 8 of them. So I think that kind of goes to show how much those nibs need to be tuned. So when they come out of the factory, they, at least for me, do not write as well as they should do. But once you can tune them, they're perfectly great. I also like that it's a piston filling pen as well. I think it looks quite classy, and I do like it, and I am writing with this pen a lot. So there you have it. That's the Majohn P138 Piston filler review. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye-bye.